What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review an EP by Royce the 5'9". Basically, this project is called Tabernacle Trust the Shooter EP, and it came out in the early spring of 2016. Now, the thing about this project is Royce was kind of back on the come up again. He had kind of gotten like a second wind and stuff between like Slaughterhouse and Bad Meets Evil and some of that type of stuff. So this is just kind of an in-between project. I mean, he had dropped like Prime, the album with DJ Premier in like late 2014, and then he was also a part of Shady 15 and some of those particular records. But this one was kind of an in-between process. But just a few weeks later, he would drop his 2016 album Layers, which was I'm gonna get to that one as time goes along. I want to see what that one's about. But this one kind of has some of the singles that would show up later on Layers. And I would have to say about this particular project, Tabernacle Trust the Shooter, that it's actually one of Royce the 5'9's best projects. I feel like I like this one, although I'm starting to like the Allegory a lot more than I did last year when I reviewed it. That's the last time I checked in with Royce the 5'9. I start to like that project more. I did purchase the Allegory and I do like it more. I definitely would give it a higher score than like a 2 out of 10 or so what I gave it last time. I would have to say on top of that, like this is pretty solid stuff here. I would say this is pretty close to being up there with like the Bad Meets. Say this is pretty close to being up there with like the Bad Meets Evil album, Hell the sequel, and that type of stuff. This has a lot of good appeal about it, and another video that I'm going to post down the road that has something to do with this. Another video that I'm going to post down the road that has to do with this project is Jackal Goldkick had talked to me about in early 2022 that Eminem was supposed to be on this album, Trust the Shooter, and he was supposed to be on the song Rap on Steroids. Eminem was supposed to be on the song Rap on Steroids, and it's really too bad that he wasn't on there. I mean, I think I kind of understand the reason as to why, because I think in some cases, just considering that Eminem, his sheer ubiquitous popularity, I probably think that Royce probably didn't want Eminem to steal his thunder and that type of stuff, as far as trying to say that he didn't want people to just check out this album solely for the Eminem feature and that type of stuff and then not care about anything else. I mean, it's kind of the concept. It really took Royce the 5'9 until like his 2018 album Book of Ryan to finally have like an Eminem verse on there. I mean, Eminem has been on these albums in the past, but it's just mostly been on like the chorus and stuff. But at the tail end of Rap on Steroids, Eminem says like shady on steroids, something like that. He's on there for like a single sentence and that sort of thing. It's pretty dope to kind of get that. But there's definitely some good stuff on here, and I would have to say Royce the 5'9, this is pretty much one of his better. This is one of my more favorite projects from Royce the 5'9. I think I like this one more than Rock City 2.0, and would say I think I like this better than Death is Certain. I would say it's probably just a hair or two or three better than Rock City 2.0, even though that's not a classic. I do feel like it has some good bops on there that I appreciate a lot more now, like Boom and Rock City and some of those type ones. But I just would have to say there's definitely some gems on here. Royce, normal complaint about Royce the 5'9 is he doesn't always have like the best productions on his albums, but I would definitely have to say that that's not the case on here. He definitely has some litty ones. He kind of meshes with some of the 2010s trap sounds that were becoming popular around that time. And I would say he has more than a few club bops on here that kind of give him some social kind of affability just in like a sense of a nightlife. So I definitely think Eminem could take a page out of this playbook and have some of those type moments. I definitely like the concept of getting some of these. Royce the 5'9 really has some good litty songs on here that just have a lot of flash. It's a pretty well produced project, and it definitely has a lot of good stuff on here that just has like some urban and just overall kind of electric kind of feels about it. So it's definitely some pretty good stuff. There's some soulful moments on here. There's kind of like some introspective kind of moments, some thought provoking stuff, just some overall good bops on here as far as that kind of goes. Just a good assortment of just for an EP. And it's strange that this is an EP when basically there's 12, 14 songs on here. There's 14 songs on the edition I'm reviewing, the Spotify edition, but then on top of that, there's like two interludes that I'm not going to count as much. There's 12 songs on here, but it's just a lot of good stuff to kind of talk about. So I'll go ahead and talk about the singles. The two singles would be Tabernacle and Trust the Shooter. I'm going to talk about Tabernacle. I only recommend one of the singles. I don't recommend the title track, Trust the Shooter, but I do recommend the other title track, Tabernacle. So this one, Tabernacle, is basically like a city late day commerce malaise. I would have to say it's a typical day in Mellow Traverse tune, I would have to say, and it's a typical day in Mellow Traverse for some blue collar rap, I would definitely feel like. So this is just a good bop to kind of have on like a breezy, just kind of mellow kind of afternoon, something like that, to kind of have in like some city fare. It's interesting because Royce the 5'9 is not from like New York and places like that, Boston, some of those type places on the East Coast, but it just kind of feels like something that you would listen to out in the big city life as far as that kind of goes. Just a real bleary kind of bop as far as that kind of goes and such. Is definitely, yeah, Royce is from Detroit, but this really just feels like a dreary and just kind of worn out just a little bit, but still kind of in a good fashion of like a good city kind of pizzazz kind of tune as far as that kind of goes. Just has some good blue collar malaise about it as far as that kind of goes. Just a nice one for that. But then to talk about Trust the Shooter, this is kind of a song. This is kind of like an ethereal almost feel. This has a really kind of eloquent and sophisticated type feel to a T. This just really feels like something like this really has like some royalty kind of eloquence towards it. I didn't quite recommend this one as much, but I would have to say about Trust the Shooter that it just is, it's a lyrical kind of one. It has some good emphasis about the song, some powerful meaning towards it, but I just didn't connect with that one as much. I mean, normally I do like some eloquent kind of songs and just royal kind of songs and that sort of feeling, but I just felt like the production was, I don't want to say it was over the top, but it just was more dramatic than like the tone of like for the most part just kind of having it. I mean, it's emphatic to the point where it's introspective in that sort of sense. It's a real thought provoking kind of one, but it might be in its thoughts a little bit more than it probably should be. I kind of feel like so that one is just maybe a hair or two more introspective than it needed to be, but it is. It's definitely a lyrical one to kind of listen to and just give you some food for thought, but I just didn't vibe as much with the mood. So, talk about the songs I do recommend on here. So, out of 14 songs, counting like the two extra songs, which would be Layers, and then the songs 13 and 14 on this album would be They Don't Make Them and Layers. Now, Layers is on Royce the 5'9's 2016 album Layers, and so is Tabernacle and Trust the Shooter. But I would have to say some of these particular ones, like I do recommend the two bonus songs. So if you can get the deluxe edition of Trust the Shooter, I would definitely recommend to do it. But I just would have to say I'm going to go ahead and recommend these songs so you know what I'm talking about. So out of minus like the two interludes, there's 12 songs out of 14 on here. So out of those 12 songs, I wound up recommending to you 7.5. So I'll go ahead and recommend those 7.5 songs. So they would be Tabernacle, Rap on Steroids, They Don't Make Them, Banjo, Digest, Wait, Layers, and the almost song is Savages. So Savages is kind of a litty night out sports game and outdoor festivities type tune. I would have to say it's a pretty good bop for that sort of thing. It has lots of city flash and it's a pretty solid tune. So I would have to say this song is definitely one for stepping out in like a basketball, football game, something like that. Just going to sports games and just some overall outdoor activities. This has some good vibes as far as that kind of goes. Just being out and about in like the city lights and some of those type weekend and just overall evening type affairs as far as that kind of goes and such. Just a good one for that sort of pizzazz. Just a good sports game kind of stuff to kind of have and such. But the reason why it's an almost song is just because I mean, the production is good, but it's just kind of minimalist to the point where I just question how many times in the standard shuffle session that I would listen to it. Just when it comes up, it is kind of here and there as to when I would listen to it and that sort of stuff. I mean, sometimes I would listen to it, but maybe sometimes I wouldn't. It's a good song, but the minimalist production kind of deters it from being like a complete utter must have. So I would have to say about that, but that's just kind of the thing. But there are some nice ones on here that do have some pretty wicked beats. Like a definite nice one on here is Banjo, and this has West Side Gun, Styles P from the Locks, and then Conway. West Side Gun and Conway, I think, are from Griselda, so that's pretty dope to kind of get that. But this is Banjo is basically like a menacing, dramatic, kind of sophisticated, out and about type jazz. I would have to say it's a good posse cut, and it's a good posse cut, and the song has like a nice, brisk, and icy kind of feel about it. So this is definitely one that I feel like could be for like the winter, just a real biting winter. This could just be a good one for the winter, just a real biting kind of winter as far as that kind of goes. Definitely a good menacing type feel about it. This one just has a real imperative kind of beat, just dramatic, and just overall has some imposingness about it that I definitely liked. All four of these cats tear this song up, so this is a pretty nice one. This is probably one of the best songs in the album. This is an example of why I feel like this is probably one of Royce's best projects, because this one is just such an overall good highlight and just a fun song to listen to and kind of have as far as that kind of goes. But then some other ones on here that are good. Digest is kind of a more commercial bop-ish kind of beat. I would have to say it's a glitzy trap song, and it's a solid album cut, and it's pretty palatable. It's a solid album cut and it's pretty palatable, I would have to say. So this is just an example of one that just kind of has like, this is just an example one that's just kind of here and there. It's just kind of one that's kind of more spare, not maybe one like the immediate kind of breadwinners, but this is just kind of like a one that you stumble upon and just realize it's just a good, nice bop overall. This really feels like a pretty just a really excellent kind of album cut on here just to kind of have it. It has like some trap productions as far as that kind of goes. It's more kind of commercial and contemporary sounding, but I definitely like the concept of it. For the most part, Royce the 5'9 does not always typically kind of show up on songs like this, so it's pretty good to kind of get a song like this. Pretty good bopish one. Definitely a good night fair and decent smoke session to kind of have. Rap on Steroids. Rap on Steroids is a definite highlight off this album. This is one of the best songs in the album. And this is just an overall excellent Royce the 5'9 song, I would have to say. It's a snazzy. This song is some snazzy nightclub fare, I would have to say. This song is some snazzy nightclub fare, I would have to say. It's a good hopper and it gets the place jumping real well, I would have to say. And it's just a song that needed Eminem. It's really too bad that definitely too bad that Eminem wasn't on this song. He would have been a pretty huge heavy hitter to have had on here. It's just a real kind of vast disappointment. I mean, I understand the reason why, just because I think Royce wanted to get his fame and glitz with without Eminem's help. I kind of look after just being able to say, I think maybe there should have been like a different version, especially all these years later. There should have been a version where we could have heard what Eminem was going to do with it, because I can just see Eminem tearing this song apart. This is just a definite, excellent kind of nightclub pizzazz, and it's just very snazzy as far as that kind of goes. It's just a good highlight that would have been great for like a Bad Meets Evil tune. But I do like Black Thought on here. Yeah, I mean, I do like Black Thought on here. That works pretty well to kind of get it like that. So it's a good concept, but it's just kind of the thing. So another nice one on here is Wait. This Wait is a nice one. This is a peppy kind of hustle song with brunch out and about commerce about it. It has a workaday feel, but the vibes are pretty catchy. So this is just kind of one that I would expect from like Kendrick Lamar or someone like that. Just one of those type cats like J. Cole, Kendrick. This is just one that I would expect from J. Cole or Kendrick, someone like that. Just some sort of lyrical cat as far as that kind of goes. It's just a definite nice boppish kind of one. It's just a definite nice kind of hustle song, and just has a lot of pep and motivation about it that just really kind of is inspiring as far as that kind of goes. It's a good kind of one to kind of have for like brunch commerce, just kind of early morning, getting breakfast, something like that, just getting some good snacks and those sorts of things, but just kind of being out and about. It just really feels like some good kind of 10 a.m., 11 a.m. kind of commerce as far as that kind of goes. This one can kind of be blue collar in a sense. It's just not quite as ravenous and quite as rugged as like it's not quite as ravenous and as rugged as some of the other songs on this album kind of are, but this works. It's just a pretty affable song and just commercial in a sense, and just like a blue collar sense. So that's a good one. A pretty good highlight on here is They Don't Make Them. This is definitely a bleary night out pizzazz of a song, I would have to say. It's some good weekend energy, and it's a good lyrical and contemporary track, definitely. So this is just an overall nice one. This one just has a lot of good bleary kind of energy about it. Just really kind of feels like a good night flash. Yeah, They Don't Make Them definitely has a pretty bleary and overall appealing beat. That's definitely one of the album's better production works as far as that kind of goes. Just an overall nice one. Definitely is good for like some weekend type stuff and stepping out and just like in the sense of having a thrilling time and just kind of having like life of the party kind of vibes, and just overall having a compelling type time to really have like a jovial kind of outing. And as far as that kind of goes, just definite highlight for that sort of sense. Layers, which is also on Royce the 5'9's 2016 album Layers, is a pretty hit one, I would have to say. This is a nice, soulful sophistication bop, I would have to say. It's a fancy out and about. It's some fancy out and about pizzazz, I would say, and it's just lyrical barbed wire the whole way through, and it's just a smoke one song. So this is definitely something that reminds me of like a Rick Ross song when you think of God Forgives, I Don't, or some of those type albums that have a lot of soulful type feels about it. Some of those ones like Super High off of Teflon Don, something like that. Just really kind of sophistication, balcony theater type stuff, just dramatic kind of fare, just real kind of blue blood type tune as far as that kind of goes. Just really like the sophistication. It's interesting for Royce to kind of have this angle just because he doesn't always do this sort of thing. I mean, I think this is definitely a good fit for Royce. Rick Ross feels right at home on here, and Pusha T does a pretty good job with this. He kind of has like some kind of he has some frilly stuff about him on the occasion, so it's a good concept to kind of get some of that, I would have to say. So this is just an overall highlight, definite kind of easy song to listen to. So yeah, to talk about some of the songs I didn't enjoy on here. I mean, there's only 4 songs that were really like that. I mean, some of these, like, I didn't really like the production work at all on Black History. That one was just kind of a dud to me. And I felt like Dead President Heads and Trust the Shooter were kind of some soulful and eloquent songs that kind of would have worked better. I mean, Dead President Heads, I just didn't like as much because that's a pretty lengthy song. And some of these were just very thought provoking. Like, I really felt like Royce was kind of in his mind on this particular album. And the 2 songs that do that the most are Dead President's Heads and then Trust the Shooter, the title track. So both of these are just really kind of thoughtful kind of ones to like more of an aspect than probably what I mean, if you're here to think and kind of be more mindful of things, it's a good concept to kind of have some of that. But I just look after it like it is kind of, I mean, this in some degree is kind of like a thinker's album, I would have to say. I mean, there's definitely some stepping out kind of tunes on here. There's definitely some stepping out kind of tunes on here like Banjo, Savages, Rap on Steroids, and some of those type ones, I would have to say. But I definitely kind of feel like there's also some thought provoking ones. I think in some cases, I definitely feel like Layers kind of hit extremely well. But I kind of look after some of these are just kind of more mindful ones that just didn't quite have like as sheer degree of like the compellingness that they needed to. But another one that I didn't like as much was Which Is Cool, which I remember that song from back in the day, but the concept about it is just kind of the fact that I just didn't like the beat switch up halfway through with the song. I kind of liked the original beat that initially kind of happened, but I just didn't like the beat change up of that one. It just was kind of, I mean, sometimes that happens where you just don't like the switch up. That's just kind of one that I just didn't connect with as much later on. So that was kind of one that was just a weaker one. But yeah, so to basically talk about what I'm going to score this album, me liking basically 8 songs almost out of 12 on here. This is actually I would say this is probably one of Royce's best albums, at least from what I've seen thus far. I would have to say it's up there with like Hell the sequel, and I would have to say it's definitely a pretty good one. And it's I would say it's a notch or two better than Rock City 2.0, but I definitely look after it just being able to say. So how I'm going to score this album, me liking 7.5 songs out of 12 on here, almost 8 out of 12. I would say I'm going to go ahead and give this album like a 7.75 out of 10. I feel like that's pretty good to kind of get. I would almost give it an 8 out of 10, but I kind of feel like the interlude situation is kind of, I would almost give this album like an 8 out of 10, but I kind of feel like the underground sense of it, I just kind of question like the songs that would kind of have the affable kind of popularity as far as that kind of goes, which that's always been Royce's problem is he just has not been able to deliver like a single that just is like a breadwinner that can really get him like national acclaim as far as that kind of goes. Like his biggest song is probably that song he did with Lighters with Eminem and Bruno Mars and stuff, but this is kind of in the sense where this is a good project, but I just look after it in terms of like single variety. You have to kind of be familiar and prone to lyrical rap and kind of more this kind of underground type stuff to really appreciate. This is not really a casual kind of album, which is kind of more social score territory, but I still feel like it impacts the quality enough to kind of say that it's good, but it just doesn't have that bop that you're going to ever hear on the radio or something like that that kind of has widespread kind of appeal that would just connect with buddies. So I just would have to say 7.75. The social score, though, as a result, I'm going to give the social score like a 7.5 out of 10 because I feel like this stuff is good. And there is some quality on here. I do like songs like Banjo and Savages and Rap on Steroids and some of those type ones and some of the more kind of hustle and then some of the more hustle and kind of sophisticated songs like Weight and Layers and some of those type ones, and Tabernacle's a pretty good one for that. It has some good variety on here. It's just kind of the concept of just questioning. I mean, if you have friends that don't really know about Royce the 5'9" and are not really prone to knowing about him and really only know him when he's with Eminem or something like that, it just doesn't quite hit his home as much. There's some good stuff on here and there's some great beats. Like that's a normal complaint I have about Royce the 5'9" is just the fact that his productions are usually pretty subpar. So he delivers on that. So he delivers on that front. There's definitely some excellent beats on here. It's just kind of the fact that I just feel like it has an underground kind of appeal about it. That it's just the hookiness and just the overall marketability of some of these just don't really reach casual audiences as far as that kind of goes. That's kind of the concept. But 7.5 is still pretty good. 7.75 regular score. So I would have to say in terms of the future, in terms of the future, Royce the 5'9" has been quiet since the Allegory back in early 2020, and that was before COVID time. So it's interesting that he's taken such a long break. But in the summer of 2022, Royce the 5'9" dropped like a greatest hits album that had some new songs on there. In the summer of 2022, Royce the 5'9" dropped the greatest hits album that has some new songs on there. So there is that. But I would have to say I'm going to get to some more of these Royce the 5'9" albums. But this is some pretty good stuff here. This is definitely one of Royce's best. And I would go on to fuck with that even if you're just more casual, I would have to say.